Sometimes a man disappears, no warning, no explanation. He just pulls away, and it hurts. It leaves you questioning everything. You wonder if you did something wrong, if you should have said something different, if maybe you just weren't enough. But here's what happens next. Just when you start to heal, just when the silence becomes normal, just when you finally begin to feel okay again, he comes back out of nowhere. A message, a call, hey, been thinking about you, and now you're left wondering, why is he back now? The truth, it's not always because he realized he loves you. It's often because he felt the loss of your energy. See, when you were around, emotionally available, showing up, caring, checking in, he got used to it, he got comfortable, but when you went quiet, you disrupted that comfort. You created space, and in that space, he felt the absence of something he didn't even know he was relying on. Now he's coming back, not always for love, but to see if you're still there. He's not always trying to rebuild the relationship. He's trying to see if the door is still open, if he still has access. Sometimes he's not looking for connection. He's looking for reassurance, to know he still matters to you, to soothe his own ego. Other times he's feeling lonely, not because he finally understands your worth, but because he tried to replace you and he couldn't. He realized that what you gave him, your presence, your peace, your softness, it's not something you find everywhere, and now he's looking back, not necessarily because he wants a future, but because the past feels safer than the emptiness he's sitting in now. Here's what you have to remember. He's coming back because your absence spoke louder than your presence ever had to. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you chose silence, and in that silence you took your power back. When you're constantly available, you may unintentionally diminish your own value. People tend to take for granted what they can easily access. Think about it. When something is always in reach, it loses its appeal. The more you make yourself readily available to someone, the less they appreciate the uniqueness you bring to their life. This dynamic is not just about relationships, it's a principle that applies to all areas of life. Whether it's in friendships, work environments, or romantic relationships, when you're always there, you're not giving people the opportunity to miss you. Humans are wired to value what they can't easily get. This is a basic psychological principle known as the scarcity effect. It's the reason why limited edition products are often more expensive or desirable. The idea that something is rare or hard to come by gives it a sense of importance, urgency, and exclusivity. When you make yourself scarce, you create an environment where others feel the need to value you more because they know you're not always available to them. Scarcity isn't about playing games or pretending you're uninterested. It's about maintaining your boundaries and not sacrificing your own peace for the sake of someone else's comfort. When you remove yourself from the constant equation, people are forced to reflect on how much they truly value you. They realize, maybe for the first time, that the space you occupied in their life was not as replaceable as they once thought. In relationships, whether romantic or platonic, when you're always accessible, you give the impression that your time, energy, and presence are unlimited. However, your time is not a resource that should be given out freely to everyone who demands it. The moment you stop being immediately available, it forces the other person to reassess their priorities. They now have to consider whether they want to make the effort to reach out and invest in the connection, rather than just taking your availability for granted. When you are less available, you shift the power dynamics. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's schedule or whims. Your life becomes your own, and that independence becomes magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who have a life outside of the relationship, who are self-sufficient, and who don't need constant validation to feel worthy. Scarcity gives you the space to find your own sense of fulfillment, and that in itself is incredibly attractive. It's not about being cold or distant, it's about cultivating a sense of mystery. When someone isn't sure when they'll hear from you next, they start to wonder. They think about you more. They begin to realize that in your absence they miss your presence. and when they miss you, it prompts them to value the time you do spend together more deeply. Scarcity in this sense creates a balance of desire and appreciation that would be absent if you were always readily available. This doesn't mean you should play hard to get for the sake of it. The key here is to live your life with purpose and intention, not dependent on anyone else's attention. When you stop being available all the time, you give people the opportunity to see you in a new light. Someone who has their own goals, their own passions, and their own life that is worthy of respect. This shift in perspective can often spark a renewed sense of desire as they realize they may have taken your presence for granted. The scarcity effect also allows for the development of deeper, more meaningful connections. When people aren't used to having something all the time, they learn to cherish it when they do have it. The time you spend with someone, the conversations, the moments of connection, they all become more precious. They realize that your presence isn't guaranteed, and as a result, they begin to put more effort into making the time with you count. Sometimes, people only realize the depth of their feelings when they no longer have easy access to you. When you step back and stop offering yourself freely, you create the space for someone to reflect on their own emotions and intentions. Without that constant presence, the other person begins to question how much they truly value the relationship, rather than assuming it will always be there. This can lead to a more genuine connection, one based on mutual respect and effort, rather than familiarity and convenience. Lastly, the scarcity effect doesn't just benefit the other person's appreciation of you, it also benefits your own self-worth. When you stop being available all the time, you reclaim your time and energy, making it clear that you have boundaries. You teach others to respect your space, and in turn, you gain more respect for yourself. In any relationship, it's essential to hold your value high, and that often means creating a little distance, letting the other person see that your presence is something that should be valued and earned.
There's something deeply grounding about being someone's emotional safe space. It's not always loud or dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, and often invisible until it's gone. You were that space for him.
Maybe it was in the way you listened without judgment, or how you responded to his stress with calm instead of chaos. You became the one person who felt like peace in the middle of everything he didn't know how to say out loud. He may not have told you, but he felt it. Every time he came to you with a weight on his chest and you didn't rush to fix it. You just let him feel what he needed to feel. That made you a rare presence in his life. He didn't have to perform with you. He didn't have to impress or pretend. You saw the raw, unfiltered version of him, and instead of pulling away, you stayed close. That alone created a feeling of safety he never knew he needed. Over time, he got used to it, not because he took you for granted in a cruel way, but because humans naturally adjust to comfort. It's only when comfort is taken away that its value becomes clear. When you stopped showing up in the way you used to, whether you pulled back emotionally or physically, it triggered something inside him that he couldn't quite explain. It felt like losing something soft, something safe, something real. Most men aren't taught to recognize emotional safety when they have it. They're taught to look for attraction, excitement, validation, but emotional safety, that's the quiet glue. It's the reason someone wants to come home at the end of the day. When you were no longer that open door, that calm voice, that steady presence, he felt the drop, even if he didn't have the words for it. He started noticing it in small ways. Conversations with other people felt shallow. Other connections didn't give him the same comfort. No one else asked how he really was and actually waited to hear the answer. No one else remembered the things he said when he wasn't even trying to be heard. That emptiness, that gap, it grew louder over time, and in that silence he realized something had shifted. He began to associate your absence with the loss of something deeper.
It wasn't just about losing someone he used to talk to. It was about losing the one person who made him feel like he didn't have to explain himself all the time, the one who could read his silence, the one who didn't make him feel weak for being unsure, anxious, or human. Emotional safety isn't loud, but its absence screams. That loss creates a kind of emotional restlessness. He might not even be aware that what he's missing is safety. He may just feel agitated, unsettled, nostalgic in a way that doesn't make sense to him. He might try to fill the space with other people, distractions, or noise, but none of it lands the same way. Because when someone loses emotional safety, it's not about needing attention. It's about craving a connection that actually held them, and now, in your absence, he's left with the realization that emotional safety isn't something you can fake, chase, or casually replace. When he reaches out after silence, it might feel like hope knocking again. A text that says, "I've been thinking about you," or a casual "Hey stranger," can stir something in you that had just started to settle. But what he's often looking for in that moment isn't always what you think it is. It's not always a reconnection. Sometimes it's reassurance. He's wondering if the door is still open, if he still has access, if he can still get a response from you, still spark a reaction, still matter in some part of your life. It's not always about love. It's not even always about missing you in the way you might hope. It's about wondering if he still could have you, if he wanted you. This kind of check-in doesn't require him to change. It doesn't ask for growth, accountability, or clarity. It's a moment of ego soothing. He wants to feel that he hasn't lost his grip entirely, that he's still important to someone who once saw the best in him. You represented a place where he felt seen, understood, wanted. And now he wants to make sure that feeling still exists for him, even if he doesn't intend to honor it. It's not that he doesn't care at all, it's that he cares more about the feeling you gave him than about rebuilding something real. He might not even realize he's doing it. He might believe he misses you, but when you ask him what he's really looking for, he doesn't have the words. He just knows that he wants to know he could still reach you if he needed to. This is why he sends just enough to keep you thinking. A like on your story, a comment on a memory, a message without follow-up. It's a breadcrumb trail, not a path forward, because to reconnect means to rebuild trust, to show up consistently, to do the work. But to seek reassurance, that only takes a single ping, just enough to stir your heart without offering his in return, and the moment you respond, even just to say hi, he gets what he came for. He knows he still holds space in your mind. That he still has a piece of you, that's the fix. The loop closes, and if you let it, it can leave you more confused than before, because your hope gets reactivated without anything real being offered. He wants to know he still has power. Not necessarily because he wants to use it, but because losing it feels unfamiliar. You gave him a place to land. When that disappears, it shakes his confidence, so he comes back lightly, carefully, without commitment. Not to reconnect, but to feel that he could, if he ever decided to, and if you let him in under the belief that it means something deeper, you start waiting again, hoping again, but he already got what he came for. The reassurance that you haven't fully moved on, even if he has no plans to stay in the beginning. It's easy for someone to think they'll find what you gave them somewhere else. The attention, the warmth, the little things you did without being asked. It can all feel like something they'll stumble across again without effort. So they leave or drift, thinking comfort is common. But what they often don't realize is that true emotional comfort doesn't announce itself loudly. It's not flashy or dramatic. It's in the way you remembered what they liked without needing reminders, in the way you made space for their silence without making it awkward, in the way you knew how to be there without making it feel like pressure at first. They're distracted. New people, new conversations, a different kind of energy. There's noise, and that noise makes them feel like they've moved on, like they've upgraded, like they're chasing something more exciting.
but that noise always fades. And when it does, something quieter starts speaking louder. The emptiness of your absence, that's when it hits. When there's no one else asking how their day really was. No one laughing at the small things they used to only share with you. No one offering softness without a motive. That's when they notice what they lost wasn't just a relationship. It was a sense of home. The comfort you gave wasn't just about being kind. It was about being consistent. Showing up, holding space, understanding moods without needing explanations. That kind of emotional safety is rare, and once it's gone, everything else starts to feel slightly colder, slightly louder, slightly more temporary. They look for it in new connections, but it doesn't land the same. Maybe the chemistry is there, maybe the thrill exists, but the depth feels missing. The kind of comfort you provided doesn't live on the surface. It lives in the moments in between, the way you knew how to be near without needing attention, the way your presence softened their day without asking anything in return, so they circle back. Not always because they want to rebuild, but because they realize how hard it is to replace the way you made them feel. Comfort like yours doesn't show up every day. It's not loud enough to compete with chaos, but it's the thing people miss when chaos wears off, and in that stillness, long after they thought they'd moved on, they begin to understand that your kind of presence wasn't just familiar, it was rare, and letting it go didn't free them the way they thought it would. Curiosity is a powerful force, especially when paired with nostalgia. When enough time passes, the sharp edges of a relationship start to blur. The arguments aren't as loud in his memory, the silence doesn't feel as heavy, and the things that made him pull away in the first place don't seem as overwhelming. What's left are flashes of warmth, of laughter, of moments that felt safe. Even if they weren't always consistent, nostalgia doesn't ask for the full truth. It cherry-picks, it highlights the times you made him feel important, wanted, seen. The way you looked at him when he was lost. The way your voice softened when you knew he was stressed. Memory has a way of erasing the complexities and painting the past in tones more beautiful than they actually were. Now he's left with questions. What if he gave it another chance? What if things could be different this time? What if he made a mistake? Curiosity feeds the urge to reach out, not because he's certain of what he wants, but because he wants to know if you're still there, if the feeling could be recaptured, if what he remembers is something that still lives in you. The version of you he remembers might not even be the version of you that exists anymore, but in his mind you're frozen in time, still offering comfort, still giving without asking much back. He's not seeing you fully. He's seeing a reflection of the comfort and connection he thinks he lost. That kind of illusion is hard to resist when the present feels unsure or unfulfilling. He might not be lonely in a physical sense, but emotionally there's a gap. Nostalgia fills that gap with memories of you. Curiosity nudges him to explore it, and that mix can be dangerous because it pushes him to reach back without really thinking through what he's offering or what he's prepared to give this time. He remembers how you used to make him feel, not how much you had to give to make him feel that way. He forgets the effort, the compromises, the emotional labor you carried without complaint. All he sees is the end result, the comfort, and he wonders if it's still available to him, if he still has access to that version of you. Reaching out becomes less about fixing the past and more about soothing the ache of uncertainty. Not knowing if you've moved on, not knowing if he still matters, not knowing if the past was as meaningful to you as it now suddenly feels to him. That unknowing becomes its own kind of pressure, and that's what drives the message, the call, the sudden reappearance. But the problem with nostalgia is that it's not rooted in reality, it's filtered. It's the truth until it feels safer to revisit than to face the present. And curiosity isn't commitment, it's just a question, not an answer. So when he comes back, it's often not because he's ready, it's because memory made him forget why he left when you stopped reaching out. Something shifted, not just in the dynamic between you two, but inside of him. Your silence wasn't just quiet, it was loud. Loud enough to make him sit with what he had chosen, loud enough to make him feel the emptiness where your energy used to live. Up until then, he may have believed that things would stay the same, that you'd always be there, always care, always stay soft. But when you stopped showing up, you created contrast. That contrast is what makes him notice. It's what makes him uncomfortable, because he was used to the version of you that gave freely, that stayed kind even when he was distant, that kept giving grace when he offered none in return. But when that version of you disappeared, it left behind a void, and that void started asking questions he didn't want to answer. He thought you'd wait, thought you'd check in, thought you'd be the one to reopen the door. But you didn't, and that silence forced him to confront a version of himself he didn't expect to meet, the one who made the decision to walk away or withdraw or take you for granted. And for the first time, he had to live inside the result of that decision without your presence softening the blow before. The emotional gap didn't feel like a gap because you were filling it. You were the one reaching across it, trying to keep the connection alive. The imbalance didn't feel as heavy because you were the one carrying most of the emotional weight, but once you put it down, the absence started to feel real, tangible. And that's when he began to feel the impact of the very choices he made now. He's sitting with the contrast between what was and what is, between being someone you once prioritized and being someone who no longer gets a response, between having access to your energy and having to wonder if he ever really understood its worth. That kind of contrast is unsettling because it shines a light on how much he was receiving, without even having to ask, and he's probably remembering all the things he used to overlook. How easy it was to talk to you, how safe you made him feel without making a big deal of it, how your presence had a way of grounding him when everything else felt chaotic, and now, without that presence, the world feels different. Colder, less certain, less full. Your silence becomes a mirror, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. It reflects back everything he couldn't or wouldn't see when you were still there. It reveals how much effort you made, how consistent you were, how valuable your softness truly was. And that realization doesn't land gently, it lands heavy, because it's not just about losing you. It's about realizing he is the one who let go first. You didn't change to hurt him. You changed because he gave you no other choice. And now the silence you left behind is speaking the truth he didn't want to hear. You created contrast, and now he finally has to sit in the space where your presence used to be and feel what it's like to be on the outside looking in. So now, when he shows up again, you get to decide, is he returning with clarity, consistency, and respect? Or is he just circling back for comfort, not commitment? You are not someone's backup plan. You are not someone's maybe. You are not someone's what if. You're a choice, a whole, valuable, intentional choice. And if someone couldn't see your worth when you were near, they don't automatically deserve access now that you're gone. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone return but not let them back in. You don't need a man who misses you when it's convenient. You deserve one who chooses you from the start.